I'm Holly Morehouse, and I'm joined by my Vermont Afterschool colleagues, Alyssa Faber, Sam Gralty, and Cassie Wilner. We are co-hosting this youth forum with Vermont's 9to26 Coalition. The coalition is an action-oriented group of Vermonters working in partnership to achieve positive outcomes for youth by ensuring that all young people ages 9 to 26 are safe, healthy, supported, educated, and engaged. The purpose of the forum today is to give youth a space to share about their experiences during COVID-19 crisis in Vermont. No one knows better and no one knows more about what it is like to be a young person in Vermont today than these youth and young adults. So we're so fortunate to be able to hear from them. Participating today, we have a wonderful and diverse group of young people, ages 9 to 23, from locations throughout Vermont. We are so appreciative of them taking this time to share their experiences, thoughts, concerns, and ideas with us today. And now I'd like to turn the floor over to Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman to say a few words of welcome and start off the forum.
Thank you, Holly, and I do wish we could all be in person at the State House. These are the kinds of events that I actually enjoy about the most in my job, is welcoming people into both the political process, but also hearing from folks in your experiences, what's working and what's not working, or what could or should maybe be different, and if there's a role for government to help with some of those things. I want to just briefly say that after school programs and youth programs are something that is sort of in my blood from when I was a kid. My mom was actually on the school board in my town growing up. And in the 70s, she helped get started in a number of after-school programs that back then was sort of an unheard of concept. And there's a term that probably most of you have never heard called latchkey kids. And the idea was that after school at 2 o'clock or so, kids would go home and they would actually go into an empty house because both parents were starting to work instead of just one parent. And so a lot of after-school programs were developed both to give kids things to do, to continue to socialize with others, and also to give guidance and direction, and also actually to allow for a lot of women to go to work, which was not something that was as common back then as it is now. And thankfully now, more folks can work. Sometimes folks have to work. That's a whole nother discussion for another day. But so the topic of youth programs outside of school hours has been talked about around my dinner table my whole life growing up. And I'm really excited about the ideas and thoughts that you have about what could and should happen for those after school hours in particular. And I'm excited to hear from you all. I will say, I think I might know one or two of you. I don't know if April, my family has provided vegetables to your family for some time. There's not too many Trzanskis out there. That was an awesome blended last name. I will say, by the way, just as a comedic aside, when I married my spouse, her last name is Nevitt, and we considered blending our names to be Zuckerit, or even better, Neverman. We ended up each keeping our names, but I like the Trzansky blend. I won't focus on you anymore, but it is kind of fun. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts. So I don't know if Holly, you wanted more than that, or just a welcome and hello such as that.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Great.
So for those of you watching from home or watching the recording afterwards, this is how it's going to run. The youth and young adults will read or share their testimony, similar to how it's done in a regular public hearing. The youth and young adults have all been asked to share 1 or 2 minutes each. So we're going to move through pretty quickly with all their different stories and insights. Quick reminders to all the youth and young adults who are going to be speaking. We're all staying muted until it's your turn to speak, and Alyssa will let you know when you're up. Before you start, just take a moment, position yourself, look right at that camera, take that deep breath, start with your name, and if you'd like to share your town, that's great. It'll also help all of us who are listening. We really want to hear what you have to say, so speak slowly and clearly. Don't worry about the clock. Just get your words across. And one more reminder that the forum is being recorded and live streamed. So as we discussed in the prep session, be certain that anything you share today are things that you're okay with being public and sharing in this forum. So thank you again for being here and for showing up to speak and to have your voices heard. And with that, Timur is going to start us off.
Hello, I'm Timur Zachary Langford. I am a senior in high school and I currently live in Manchester, Vermont. So, when I first heard we were social distance, I didn't realize how distant it would feel. Naturally, I was upset about things like prom and graduation and how they would be affected. But as more time passed, the more I missed just casual interactions with my peers. The longer the distancing has been lasting, the more it has begun to feel like some kind of isolation. In this time, I've begun to grasp the gravity of our situation, consequences I had not immediately jumped to. I've grown quite concerned about how my education in the fall could or will be affected by the current state of our world. My education, and therefore my future, could be affected in ways I just don't understand at this time. People my age may not be thinking about our current situation as seriously as they should be. Some people of all ages seem to be ignoring important protocols placed to minimize the spread of coronavirus. It would seem that some people lack a sense of responsibility for their community and the others around them. This could be partially due to the maturity of said offenders, but there's also somewhat a lack of information out there. I personally have used the CDC's website to try and keep myself informed on what is safe and what is not. But I have found, as well as others of my age, that there is no such thing as too much information when learning about such life-changing topics. It would seem that many still don't truly understand the urgency of our situation. And I hope, with the bottom of my heart, that we can all come together as a community to make sure we all are well informed on our situation. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Timur. And Gwen, you're up next.
Hi, my name is Gwen and I'm a fifth grader at Newport City Elementary School. Thank you for taking this time to hear my thoughts today. A few weeks ago, my mom told me some really scary stuff. She is a nurse at our local hospital and she said she might not be able to come home if she was caring for COVID patients. That me and my siblings might have to stay with my grandparents or dad for a while so we would stay safe. This scared me a lot. I see my mom every day and not being able to do that would make me very sad. As time went on, I started to think about all the other families who are going through the same thing. I thought of all the sacrifices people are making right now, from nurses showing up to patients who might die alone. I wondered if there was a way to honor or celebrate their strength and bravery. That's when I thought of a memorial to honor those who sacrificed their safety to care for others, and also to honor people who died alone so that we could all be safe. By doing this, we will not forget that our health and safety is not something to take for granted, and that we must act as a community in order to stay strong. Thank you.
Thanks, Gwen. Mackenzie, you're up next.
Good afternoon. My name is Mackenzie Smith. I'm 16 years old. I live in West Rutland and I attend the Long Trail School. I'm a member of our student council and our peer emotional wellness group, which is dedicated to the mental health and wellness of our student body. One of the special things about our school is our tight-knit community between all of our students and teachers. One of our school's top priorities is to make sure our students and faculty members are mentally healthy and mindful, but during these isolated times, it's become inherently difficult to ensure the mental safety of our student body. As a teenager, I feel that many of us rely on the support of guidance counselors and therapists to cope with the highs and lows of becoming an adult. With these circumstances, I feel that many students are not getting the support they need to succeed in the remainder of the school year and through summer. Communication, one of the many important aspects of mental health, has become much more difficult through technology, and some families are not fortunate enough to provide their kids with therapists outside of school. Legislators and friends, I ask for your help from not only myself, but from the thousands of Vermont teenagers and kids feeling alone and helpless. With your help, we can fund and distribute the mental health support that we young adults need. I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Lexia, you're up.
Good afternoon. My name is Lexia Stanley, and today I'm going to be talking about mental health and community support for it. Thank you for your time. Before I begin, I would like to mention that, like a couple other people have, that phone call that we all got was pretty scary and, for me, very heartbreaking. Being an athlete and also being a student at a school, in a high school, can be very scary because it's big, it's a new place, and sometimes things happen that we don't expect, like this pandemic. Because of this pandemic, a lot of us have missed out on our track events. For me, it would be track events, or any other sports events, our junior, senior prom, and maybe even graduation. Being isolated, because we're all stuck inside, people are beginning to feel isolated, which is affecting their mental health because they only have the person or people they live with to talk to, or some people don't even have anyone at all. I think Vermont should put in a community center somewhere so that when people are feeling low, they have a community resource that they can use at any time. It also should have a way to do virtual meetings and have a crisis line. I think this would be helpful because people will be able to talk about their own personal issues while being around people who deal with similar issues. Please consider this idea. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Lexia. April, you're on next.
Hi, my name is April Truzansky. I'm in 7th grade at Hunt Middle School in Burlington. COVID-19 has changed my life dramatically. My awareness of life around me, germs and how they pass from person to person, and that it is a serious life-changing situation. Although I'm not scared, I'm cautious about spending time with other people and spreading germs. For this reason, I get why they need to close schools. In some ways, my school being closed has made my life easier. For example, less schoolwork and less time in the school building. No face-to-face contact with the kids and the typical drama of middle school. It has been harder though, because I'm not able to see my friends. Schoolwork online it has allowed me to consider new activities and hobbies. My family has gone out of town to be in nature. A suggestion I would make to help teens would be to create indoor spaces that are safe to gather, like partitions they use in grocery stores, or allow overnight camps for a few weeks where kids are tested so we can be away from home but safe. Maybe help communities organize outdoor activities like kayaking or biking where we're apart but together. I'm hopeful that we find a cure and that the number of infected people will help us get back to normal. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Anthony, you're on.
Okay. Hi, my name is Anthony. I'm 9 years old and in the 4th grade. I am having a hard time with school being canceled. I am stuck at home with nothing to do all day and no one to talk to or play with while my parents are working from home at their computers. Everyone just assumes that all the kids are at home playing with their siblings and hanging out with a parent who's not working. That's just great, but it's not true for everyone. It's also hard not to be at school where I can learn from my teachers and classmates. People think we can just watch YouTube videos and that's it, but that doesn't really work. I understand that the state closed schools and businesses to protect people from COVID-19, but at the end of March, the governor decided to close school for the rest of the year instead of making decisions based on science and new data. On April 10th, the state decided to allow tourists to make reservations for hotels starting June 15th, but school remains closed for the rest of the year. It feels like tourists are more important than kids. It's pointless that we had to stay home from school for 3 months, but then people from other places with worse outbreaks will come to Vermont. I want the state to prioritize running summer camps instead of letting tourists come.
Thanks, Anthony. Nora, or Eleanor, you're up next.
Hello, my name is Eleanor. I am 10 years old, and today I will be talking about network services. Recently, my identical twin was separated from me because of her health conditions, and I really miss her. This is just an example, but the feeling to miss her is almost traumatizing. The feeling that she could get sick or die gives me the shudders, but I realized that I was separated from her because it could save her life. Her life. I believe that many other people are experiencing the same problem, so I think that their access to virtual calling is crucial. I believe that network services should provide free Wi-Fi and internet services. I also realize that some families don't have access to electronic devices, so I think the government should provide those devices too. These crucial services should be provided to families in need. I really understand the urge, hope, and longing to be at least the sight of loved ones and friends. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Eleanor. Tessa, you're next.
Hi, my name is Tessa. I live in Burlington, Vermont. I will be speaking about internet access like Eleanor. Online learning is different. We've been doing it for 6 weeks now, and I'm already getting tired of it. I miss learning in a classroom. Not only do I miss seeing people laugh as they walk down the halls to go to different classrooms, I miss eating lunch with my language arts teacher and a few friends. A few weeks ago, the quarter ended, and I wanted to get my science grade up. Instead of being able to talk to my teacher, I had to email him. He had a lot going on to figure out what the rest of the year would look like, so we didn't respond for a while. My parents are teachers, and they are always in meetings, so I have to do most of my work alone. A suggestion I make is that we make sure everybody has internet access, because without the internet, it's really hard for students to learn, and everybody needs to learn during this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Tessa. Ben, you're up next.
Hi, my name is Ben Park, and I'm a junior in high school from West Paulet in southern Vermont. I, like Mackenzie and Timor, also attend Long Trail School. Overall, like most people my age, one of the biggest challenges I am facing as a young person is the social aspect of the quarantine. For me, and for many, it was a drastic shift from seeing your friends every day to not being able to see them in person for an indefinite period. Although other virtual mediums exist, it simply isn't the same, and I'm worried that for some of my peers, physical isolation could mean social isolation. Furthermore, I believe as social beings, especially at this point in our lives, it is really important to engage with others and grow our interpersonal relationship skills. I think the importance of human interaction at this age cannot be overstated, and the social aspect of that quarantine is a critical factor for many young adults. Tangentially, I additionally often think the mental health of young adults is overlooked, and I think it'd be societally beneficial to place a special emphasis on making resources available for young adults who are struggling with pre-existing issues or one brought on by the onset of the pandemic. For my peers who are perhaps more introverted, school may serve as one of their only opportunities to engage with others, and without that, I fear some will really suffer. Overall, I hope the qualitative psychosocial well-being of young adults is prioritized as much as the quantitative educational outcomes when it comes to governmental policy. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ben. Hadley, it's your turn.
Hi, my name is Hadley Andrew, and I'm from Westover, Vermont. I go to Leon Gray in Townsend, Vermont, and I'm in 7th grade. I'm 13 years old. My testimony is I feel that the amount of coursework isn't enough since the pandemic started. We currently have only about 2 hours of work per day, and this is a lot less than we had in school. I'm worried about falling behind other schools in other states for next year. It also makes the day very long for me since both of my parents still work full-time. I have friends in other states, for example, who are maintaining the same level of work through Zoom classes every day. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thanks, Hadley. Sophia, you're next.
Hello, my name is Sophia Clark. I'm 16 and I live in Hyde Park, Vermont, and I would like to thank you for taking this time to hear what I have to say. COVID-19 has been both a burden and a blessing. I think this is a time where we all need to tune into our higher selves and ask the question, what is it that we truly want in our lives? And the answer for most of us, I hope, is peace, safety, and health. This virus has shown us that it does not matter what your age, gender, race, religion, financial, or social status is. We are all humans and we all deserve life, love, liberty, and the support from one another. As you are well aware, many people on this planet are experiencing an elevated state of emotional, financial, and physical stress. Right now, food insecurity are top priorities in which many people's needs are not being met. Growing up on an organic family-owned farm has opened me up to the significance and importance of food in our society. I believe that regenerative agriculture can help save humankind as well as help restore the earth. I think that regenerative agriculture should be a top priority to teach people of all ages in this time of crisis. Because when it comes down to it, food is the baseline to every civilization, past and present. It is the very reason we are alive. My wish is for citizens of Vermont and the rest of the world to have easier, more sustainable access to supplies such as compost, seeds, tools, and to find a way to share land. This is already being implemented by some programs such as Heifer International, but it must be implemented more. Co-ops, CSAs, gardens, we need more. Now is the time when we must learn to feed ourselves and those in need, such as the homeless, unemployed, and elderly, as well as those that struggle with mental and physical illnesses. We must change. We must find connection in ourselves, each other, and the earth. COVID-19 is a wake-up call, so are we awake enough to hear it? Thank you.
Thanks, Sophia. Kaylee, you're up next.
My name is Kaylee Scott. I'm a 9th grader at in Hartford, Vermont. Because of quarantine, we are able to spend more time with our families. Plus, we can also go outside more throughout the day. But we're also missing physical interaction that we normally have. We don't get to see or talk to our teachers in person or other students. Remote learning is also harder. Working on computers throughout the day really hurts my head. It's also confusing and different than what I'm used to. So it's taking a little while to adapt. We don't have the ability to participate in team sports like we normally would. It's also hard not to be able to visit with my great-grandparents and knowing that they're all alone. We call, but it's not the same. Thank you.
Thanks, Kaylee. Arrow, you're next.
Hello, I'm Arrow Burnell, and I'm from Newport City, Vermont. I appreciate you asking me to be here. I'm concerned about the isolation problems this pandemic has caused. I'm more of an introvert, but I really miss having my friends there with me. Sure, we can FaceTime and text, but it's nothing compared to them physically being there by your side. It gets lonely not having friends to laugh and joke with. I miss talking at lunch and hanging out when we have free time, walking the halls and laughing about inside jokes. I can't see my friends for another 4 months at least, if we're allowed to go back to seeing each other. Even though I love my family, only seeing the same two faces every day isn't good for mental stimulation. In this day and age, mental health is an important topic, and isolation just isn't a good factor for that. We're missing out on tons of events as well. For some examples, we're missing out on important milestones like graduation, making shared memories, and our sense of community. Us as human beings need human contact, so isolation is a severe problem. That is all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Arrow. Steffi, it's your turn.
Hello, my name is Steffi. I'm a junior at Winooski High School. Twice a month on Fridays, Winooski High School has a truck full of farm food products. This is known as the food bank. At the food bank, I feel proud of the diversity and the community of my town. During this crisis, I have observed food services growing and heard of grocery shelves being empty. A lot of people have been asking the question, how do we help our community during this crisis? I have an idea inspired by a resident called A Bin Full of Goods. Step 1, the town takes a storage bin and locates it at every little free library location in every town, which is around 3 to 5. Step 2, each community member can give toiletries, pasta, cans, and a roll of toilet paper into the storage bin. Without realizing it, we will be building a 24/7 food bank and helping the homeless and those struggling in silence. The purpose is to have every community member of each town feel useful by engaging into the bins full of goods. Now, let's make our community feel proud again. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Steffi. Cynthia, you're next.
My name is Cynthia. I am 9 years old. I'm in 3rd grade at Westford School. Some of the challenges I have during the pandemic are social distancing because I can't really play closely with my friends a lot. We have to stay at home all the time, so I don't really have much to do. I miss going to school because I can't see any of my friends or teachers. Not being able to share toys with my friends in my neighborhood. I have to wear face coverings when we have to go places. I miss seeing my other family members. Online learning is challenging because I don't have a teacher there to explain things at the same time I'm doing my work. Not being able to go into stores with my parents. Thank you for your time. I hope you all stay healthy.
Thank you, Cynthia. Abby, you're up.
Hi, my name is Abby. I am 10 years old. I am thankful to be part of this group. The biggest challenge I am facing is being away from my family. I have one lung and other health issues. I am at high risk of getting really sick. My mom and I are living alone to keep me safe. I really miss my family. I miss my twin sister Nora the most. This is making me really sad. What plan do you have to keep people like me safe? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Abby. Brooke, it's your turn. Brooke, we can't hear you. Can you make sure your sound's on and just start again?
Hi, my name is Brooke and I'm
Good.
from Newport. Thank you for listening to me today. There is a time when we think, what's happened to the kids that got special needs and disorders that have to be locked up? And what will happen if we have to go back to school and someone has the corona or has a different effect to it? Why is daycare open but not schools? So babies go to daycare and kids can't go to school. And it's okay if parents don't want you to go to school, but people with disorders, it's hard for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Brooke. Now we're going to have Sam read for someone who couldn't be on the call, but she wrote her testimony for him to read.
Hi, my name is Sam Gralty. I'm going to read this for Emily Farrar. She's 10 years old and lives in Newport. Here's her story. COVID-19 has changed things for me because my routines have changed. In the beginning, all the changes were overwhelming. It was hard trying to connect with all my classes and getting all my work done. This takes up a lot of time. I also keep myself busy doing things all day so I don't think about stuff that's happening. My family normally spends time with our family, and it's hard not being able to have this time with them. I also don't like not being able to be with my friends. I miss everyone. One good thing that has happened is that the school helps families with technology if they didn't have it. That made me happy. My question for you is, can something be done to put in place throughout the school year to help students prepare if this happened again? Thank you for taking time to listen to my story. I hope everyone stays well.
Great, thanks, Sam. Connor, it's your turn.
Hi, my name is Connor Engelsman. I'm 15 years old and I'm a sophomore at Randolph Union High School in Central Vermont. I identify as queer and trans. Over the past several weeks, I have found that my own home environment has become more stressful and prone to argument due to all of us being cooped up together at home all day. Although my own legal guardians are accepting of my trans and queer identities, I know many other LGBTQIA+ youth who cannot say the same. My best friend is trans and queer and lives in an unaccepting household. Only 2 of his friends have managed to stay in touch with him during the quarantine, so I don't imagine he has any kind of community or support network he can turn to. He also suffers from severe depression and suicidal tendencies. Although his parents are not a current threat, I could easily see his situation getting much worse. In that case, he could very well decide that suicide is the only option. I am concerned about the welfare of other members of my own oppressed group, as well as victims of abuse outside the queer community in this time of social isolation and distancing. My aunt's dog is barking, I'm sorry. I believe that until society reopens like normal and the virus is no longer a threat, there needs to be more safe spaces for victims of abuse, especially members of the LGBTQIA+ community, readily available in every community. This will require transportation options for youth who cannot drive, including youth that live in very rural areas. It will also require a good amount of outreach so that everyone in a community knows that the safe space or spaces exist and are an option, regardless of the state's knowledge of past abuse, as previously safer environments may become abusive with the pressures of the quarantine. It is essential that these safe spaces are physical spaces that are maintained and sterilized regularly with the capacity for proper social distancing to prevent exposure to the virus. These spaces should also provide access to any other resources people in unsafe homes may need, like basic toiletries and amenities, options for overnight lodging, contact methods for organizations like SafeLine, face masks and hand sanitizer, and access to first aid. By providing safe spaces to victims of abuse, especially members of the LGBTQIA+ community, equity of welfare across communities will be promoted and the inevitable rise of suicide rates due to the quarantine will be dampened. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Connor. Nell, you're next.
Hey everyone, my name is Nell Carpenter and I'm from Burlington. I'm 23 years old, about a year and a half out of college and working full time at the moment for a local nonprofit. Thank you for your time and listening to me and other young people today and for taking our experiences and concerns seriously. I want to start off with 2 confessions. The first is that I found my credit score for the first time only a few months ago, despite the fact that I've been accruing student loan debt for 5 years now. And then the second is that when I went to file my initial unemployment claim a few weeks ago after being partially furloughed, I messed up on the form twice badly, and now a couple weeks later still haven't received any of the money. The point of me sharing these is to outline the unique ways in which myself and others my age are particularly vulnerable in this time as older youth being held under the same expectations as any other adult. I also want it to be said that youth facing additional institutionalized and structural oppression on the basis of identity or status are experiencing an increased magnitude of challenges that I may not touch upon today. In addition to working, staying connected with others, and maintaining my personal wellness, I'm balancing rent payments, paperwork with language I've never seen before, legislation that makes no sense, and uncertainty surrounding employment. Call us young adults or older youth or millennials, the common experience is that we are facing obstacle after obstacle that we've never been taught how to get over. The outcome, housing or other debt owed that we may not even have been aware we were taking on. Missed opportunities for financial or other support because we haven't been prepared yet to read the fine print to federal acts, or otherwise we don't qualify for them. And despair that our exciting futures full of higher education and new jobs and financial stability may not become a reality anytime soon. I ask that my age group is taken into consideration as the Vermont legislature continues to make new decisions, that Band-Aids aren't put on problems that will blow up in our faces a few months from now, that forgiveness is built into processes, and that our contributions to current efforts are recognized. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nell. Charlotte, you're next.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, legislators and Lieutenant Governor Zuckerman. My name is Charlotte Royer, and I am a sixth grader at Newport City Elementary School. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. When I'm doing online learning, I find that sometimes we struggle with connectivity issues. I consistently see about half of my class in online classes and attendance. It's hard to tell if they can connect at all or if they are just connecting in other ways. Though I can connect, some of my teachers don't have access to fast, reliable internet, which means I can't access all parts of my education. When we are able to connect, it can be hard to hear what my peers and teachers are saying. Some kids have a hard time understanding how and when to use the mute button, and I miss important information. It's also challenging to stay physically active. Some kids have sports or dance to keep them going, but others rely on recess and gym. My mom won't even let me go to the store with her, so I'm not walking around as much. In challenging times, I like to stay positive. Some things I like about being home are I get to spend more time with my family and I get to learn in a new and different way. The experience I'm getting through online learning and digital meeting sites I would have never received if not for my Corona education. Once again, thank you for your time and understanding and the opportunity to present today.
Thank you, Charlotte. Jonathan, you're next.
Hello, my name is Jonathan. I am a senior at Burlington High School. Before telling you how the coronavirus has affected me, I think it's important to tell you about my family. I live with my mom and brother. My mom has diabetes, my brother and I have autism, ADHD, and OCD. When I first heard about the coronavirus, I wasn't too worried. I didn't think it would affect me. I didn't think it would hit Vermont. Then one day, my mom told me that she wasn't going to send me to school. When I asked her why, she said it was because the virus had come to Vermont. She made her decision based on Governor Scott's announcement that students would not be penalized if parents felt uncomfortable sending their children to school. But then Governor Scott announced the closure of schools. Because I have autism, I have a hard time with change. The change in routine made me anxious. I started having meltdowns and would hurt myself. I didn't know what was going to happen. I had just started making some really good friends and hanging out with them. I miss my new friends. Most of my classes meet virtually using Google Meet. I'm struggling in my classes, but I found that FaceTime is important for me to learn. I have to see my teachers and friends. I need to be able to work one-on-one with my teachers like I did before the coronavirus. I need their support more now that we have to meet virtually and I miss my former routine. Because she has diabetes, my mom stays home. My brother's autism is more severe than mine. He doesn't understand the importance of covering his nose and mouth if he was to go outside. My mom sends me out to do essential errands to give me a break from my brother. Because of my family situation, I would like my elected officials to keep in mind that it is not just the elderly who may have an underlying health condition that puts them at higher risk for complications. My mom is only in her 40s and has diabetes. She is in the same high-risk category as a 70-something-year-old. During this pandemic, she is homebound and isolated the same as the elderly with diabetes. I also want my elected officials to realize the consequences of reopening the state too early. Many individuals with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities do not understand the importance of personal hygiene, which poses a risk to themselves and others. I want my elected officials to consider how the coronavirus is affecting all Vermonters, neurotypical and non-neurotypical. As a part of my disability, I have a hard time expressing and explaining myself, so my mom helps me write these comments. Thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you, Jonathan. Casey, you're up.
Hi, my name is.
Oh, Casey, we couldn't hear you. Let's try again. You just start over and see if we can hear you.
Who uses school sports as one of my only ways to stay active.
My favorite sport is volleyball, but I also play basketball and ultimate frisbee. When my school shut down and I lost those opportunities, it made me really think about having something new to do to stay active. Not only do I miss the physical part of playing sports, but I also miss the team part. I miss being with people in general, but most of all, I miss my friends. In the beginning, I went on walks with my friends daily, but as time went on, those walks became less frequent. When this started to happen, I turned to my treadmill and have so far gone from a 15-minute mile to a 12-minute mile. This form of exercise has not only kept me fit, but has also helped me manage my stress, given me a better night's sleep, and improved my daily mood. I am super grateful that this is a form of exercise that is available to me, but I'm worried that not everyone has ways to stay active. I noticed that the Montpelier recreation field took the tennis court nets down, but I went by the high school the other day and saw people playing at the school court. I know that many people, including some of my friends, use the tennis courts a lot, and I think it is important to keep recreation fields open for everyone as the weather starts to get warmer. I think that without putting restrictions on the usage of rec fields, there should be signs explaining how to use the fields and equipment safely. Keeping the recreation fields in Vermont open would give more people opportunities to stay active. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Casey. Riley, it's your turn.
Hello, I'm Riley Frazier from Newport City Elementary School. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. During this time, some challenges I face are my dad working at the hospital, so he's working long hours and we have to be cautious about coming in close contact with him. Another challenge is not being able to see my friends and family in person. Also, I worry about the older people in my family. But there are some things that I can learn from this time, like I can control my outcome by wearing a mask if in public. Also, I'll be grateful for the little things in life. Again, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Riley. And Alex, you're up.
Hi, my name's Alex Smart, and I'm a junior at Montpelier High School. In the past, youth voice has been discounted or discouraged, but today I would first like to thank everyone who's helped put this together because the perspective of youth is important. In 2020, our day-to-day lives as youth are probably a little different from the lives of the adults when they were our age. When we're not quarantined, major issues like school shootings, climate change, and racial justice are just some of the things that affect us. Through testimony, rallies, and other forms of action, youth show they care about the current issues. Then we were quarantined and everything went to a standstill. Those marches and testimonies were canceled, and suddenly youth movements seemed to stop. Although the physical gatherings and other forms of protest have stopped, that does not mean that youth no longer care. I know that sometimes, if something's not in my face, I can forget about it, but please don't forget about us. No one could have prepared for this crisis, but we can use it to learn. Youth need a way to keep working together on change. We need to be able to connect with other youth. That's why I urge you to support H775, which would allow for a state-mandated youth council. This would create a place for youth to speak and for their voices to be heard no matter the circumstances. Supporting youth is supporting the future. But for now, know we are here and know that we care. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. That was everyone, and that was really wonderful to listen to. Thank you all for sharing your story.
What an amazing group of young people, and all the issues that you brought up. I'm looking forward to comparing with Lieutenant Governor Zuckerman. But you know, the phrases that I heard, I mean, right, they were like, they hit on everything, right? From food and agriculture to mental health and isolation and schooling and connecting with peers and family and teachers and the upsides and the downsides. I'm wondering what thoughts and themes you're sort of taking away, Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah, that's quite a few. And I was looking down most of the time because I was trying to write pages of notes as you all were speaking. So I didn't mean to be rude and not be looking at you in the eye. And there's such a huge range of things, and a lot of them I thought were in concert with each other, and the different issues that, you know, young people are facing, I think, from sort of the isolation issues that obviously are exacerbated during this kind of living and non-social situation. But even the discussion around the social life that you miss in school, I was also reflecting on some of the kids that maybe sometimes in school even feel isolated at school because maybe they don't have as many friends or they don't have a group to be a part of. And I was thinking about how each of you are both experiencing your own isolation, as well as whether it's changing or growing your understanding of other folks' situations. You know, there were a few folks that spoke spoke about their fairly unique circumstances. Sort of one person said, I think, non-normative neurological or something to that effect. I had not heard that term, so I really appreciate that. And others who either had a health situation themselves or a family member, so they're particularly isolated, or a family member is in medicine, or Connor and your friend, just, you know, talking about what it's like to sometimes be an isolated person with being, you know, different than a lot of others. And this range of experiences. I also saw all the high fives and thumbs ups that were going on as each of you were commenting, and how folks from all over the state in this group are really supportive of each other, which I think is an amazing thing that sometimes those of us who are adults could learn, because you know, we see a lot of division in the adult world that maybe doesn't need to be there. And when I saw the camaraderie amongst all of you and support for each other, speaking up when you were nervous and supporting each other as each person spoke, was really amazing. I thought about those of you I know, because I think, Nell, I might know you from Rosie's Girls. Is that right? So, you know, you made me think about my daughter because of all the work you and others did as an inspiration for her. And I was just thinking about how each of you are inspiring each other to find your voice and to be willing to speak out about what you need. And I also thought a little bit about the complexity. Some folks were talking about the need to be together and how frustrated you are that school isn't open. And one was in relation to tourists, but also just as a whole, sort of why are we not allowed to be together? And at the same time, some of you are talking about health issues you have, or a close family member might have, or a risk category, and how important it is for us all to stay separated for other people's health or for individuals' health. And I think that's a really healthy conflict for all of you to experience, because that's actually what we face in the political world as decision makers around society, because almost any decision we make doesn't always help everybody. It might make it a little bit harder for some, and it might make it a little bit better for others. And I think even the discussion right now around why can't we all be together, while others saying being apart is potentially saving my higher risk relative, my mom or my dad or my sibling. So it's just interesting to hear that. And I think many of you recognize those complexities. And then Alex, I'm thinking you've been in my office before as well with youth activism. So as I said earlier to a couple others who I know through different avenues, it's really neat to see some of you who I already know and then get to know some of the others. And I think, Alex, I just want to say that I don't think youth are forgotten right now. In fact, in some ways, we're all thinking a lot about both the immediate present, we being the political world, are thinking about the immediate present, but also what is the future? How does our society, as it's been functioning, work well and not well for what the future can behold? And that I'm going to reflect on. And Holly, I hope it's okay, I'm weaving all these random things together, but into the discussion around broadband and computer access. And some of you talking about how half of your classmates have access and half don't. Others know that some parts of the state have almost no broadband. my screen right now may be choppy because I've just got copper wire and I'm in Chittenden County. Maybe it's working right now, but sometimes my own internet gets choppy because we don't have broadband here. And we know that about a third of Vermont has really poor or no internet. And I've been thinking about something that happened, I think, before most of you were born, which was what's called the Brigham decision around an equal opportunity for education. And right now, education is being carried out through this electronic medium, and a lot of kids don't have access to education right now. And so as we look at what we're learning now around where the state hasn't been able to, or hasn't chosen to, some of us have advocated for it, but some have not, but where the state has not chosen to invest in making sure broadband has gotten to all corners of the state. And then the challenges of that. A number of you talked about the needs that we need to meet, but those things also cost money. And the challenge of that as state officials is, with a limited amount of money, how do we meet all these needs? And are there ways for there to be more money, but in a fair way to many people? Because if half the people out there are living what's called paycheck to paycheck, they can't afford to pay more so that we can get broadband to the far corners of the state. So who can afford, and should or shouldn't they pay more? I have my opinions, but these are the kinds of conversations that your legislators have. And I'll kind of wrap up, and then I'd love to do a little Q&A. I don't know if, Holly, that's part of the plan, but I think we have time. One of the things I do when I go around the state, or did go around the state, talking with school groups, 4th graders, 10th graders, whomever, is how can you have a voice? Those of you on this screen right now, Alex has been really engaged, and others are in their own ways, but how can you have a voice in what's going on? And the reality for many of you, if you're 18 or younger, it isn't through voting yet. And unfortunately, many of you, when you get to 18, on average right now, don't vote, which is very frustrating for a lot of us who are in office, because the more of you that vote, the more of the issues that you're bringing up will have to be addressed by the people running and serving in office. But you have other ways that you can influence the system as well. For those of you that have email addresses, you can actually write an email to your legislator, and they have no idea whether you're registered to vote or not, how old or young you sound. Depending on your writing, they might be able to tell a little bit if you're younger or not. But you can actually reach out to your legislator with what matters to you. And one thing that I try to talk about a lot is, it isn't important whether they think it's important when you write, but it is important that they take what you write seriously, and that your voice does matter. And here's what I try to remind people of at the end is, no matter whether you vote or not, no matter whether you can vote or not, you are counted in the census, which is happening now, by the way. Every single one of you should talk to either your parent, your aunt, your guardian, whoever you're with, and make sure they fill out the census, because those legislators are representing an area that's determined by how many people that live there. Not how many people are 18 years old and older and vote, but the total number of people. And when they're elected, the party label is there for people to help understand who they are when they're voting for them or against them. But when you're elected to office, you actually are supposed to try to represent, and certainly at least listen to, everybody in your district, including those of you that are under 18. And so you have that opportunity to reach out to them and see how much they respond. And if they don't respond or they don't take you seriously, you have power. You can write letters to the editor. You can write comments to your front porch forum. You can let your own parents know that someone in office didn't respect at least listening to your opinion. Doesn't mean they have to agree. So all these things you've just brought me are incredible insights into what you're going through and in your mind. And even you've helped me a little bit with looking into my own daughter's mind here at home, who's been isolated at home with us for a long time as well. And the thoughts and the caring sentiments that you have, the sadnesses, some joys, and a little more time outside of school maybe, the missing of your sports has all been really informative for me. So thank you. And Holly, I don't know where you want to go next from this.
I like your idea to see if there's one or two questions from the group since we have you here, Lieutenant Governor. Did someone want to follow up on any other points or have a question about what's happening in the State House or decisions that policymakers are looking at right now? Yeah, Eleanor.
I was wondering, like, do we have any plans for when we open back up again? What are we planning to do to keep our families safe? Because we don't know if some people haven't taken the tests, haven't had the symptoms, but they can have the virus. So how are we going to deal with those situations?
So I heard some, and I didn't hear the whole question. My family is chuckling next to me because they slightly distracted me, and I apologize. That's a strange thing about all this work from home. I'm sure it happens for you with school as well, when a sibling comments or a parent talks to you while you're trying to learn. Apparently there is a cat in the box, and there's a discussion around cat in the box in the house. Anybody who's got cats knows that they love to be in boxes. So sorry to distract or be distracted, but Eleanor, you talked about, I think, when is school going to be opened up again? Can you and what's it going to look like? Well, it's an interesting situation that I find myself in, because I, as Lieutenant Governor, you would think I would know the answer. And unfortunately, I'm not in the daily meetings with the governor. That's a decision that he made a long time ago. And so I don't actually know the day-to-day decision process that's happening by the governor. I do learn a lot by watching his press conferences and from hearing from his press releases and so forth. But what I've understood is that school is not going to open up again this year, no matter how much other things get open. And I think one of you commented about how tourism is more important than school, or people being able to work seems more important than school because of the decisions that the governor made. And I think while I have plenty of disagreements with the governor on a number of things, I think it's really important to recognize that when he was making those decisions, the forecast on health impacts and the transmissibility of this disease and virus, it was really scary. And we've had a lot of people die in Vermont, and even more in other parts of the country because of how dangerous this virus is. And as much as we would love to have schools open, I think along with other group activities, whether it's restaurants, whether it's music events, whether it's summer festivals, I'll get to that, Anthony, good question, that the group events are really going to be some of the last things that get to be opened until we either understand whether we've all been infected and some of us just don't have the strong reaction, so we have a much higher group of immunized people, or we have a vaccine, or we have some other way of curing people who get this virus, because group events like school are where the most likely transmission would happen, and then you would go home and spread it to your families. So there's really a big risk here. And even going back to work, I think the governor has kept it to pretty small groups, 5 people or fewer, and folks that can work spaced apart. And most schools don't have room for 20 kids in a classroom to be 6 feet apart in all directions. So it's a really hard situation, and there isn't a great answer. Now, Anthony, you talked about tourists coming and airports being group events. Fair enough. I'm not the president with respect to air travel and who can be on planes, but there's a lot of discussion about those enclosed environments. And we're learning that the droplets of moisture that come out of our mouth and the droplets that carry this virus, many drop to the ground within a few seconds, but some amount of it is aerosolized. So it's floating in the air because it's small enough particles that doesn't drop to the ground. And so in enclosed environments, especially with recirculating air, there's real risk of it getting spread throughout. My understanding with planes is they actually take in outside air and blow out the inside air. So there is more air exchange in most airplanes than there is in most workplaces. That doesn't make it right or wrong, just presenting some information. With respect to tourists coming, that was talked about with one of the students earlier about why can't school open, but tourists are going to be allowed in June 15th. Well, right now what the governor said is they can book for tourists as of June 15th, but that may get pushed back farther. And if you actually think about when school typically ends, it's about mid-late June. And so if the governor is talking about allowing more people to be around each other by mid-June, or maybe not, that actually would fit with when you normally would be ending school. So the idea of letting you attend school sooner than that would not be in line with what that tourism situation. Sophia, I am wondering if you're related to Apple Cheek Farm, by the way. Is that, I'm looking for you on the screen. I don't actually see you at the moment, but maybe you're on the next screen over. You're welcome to unmute and say yes if you are. But anyway, so hello to your mom and dad if you are Apple Cheek Farm.
Yep.
Cool. So your question is valuable. Well, all of your questions and comments are valuable to me, but it's close to me because you may already know that I'm also a farmer. We raise organic animals, as do you. Not as many farms do organic animals, so thumbs up to you all, and vegetables. And I think there's a lot of conversations happening now, and a couple of the students commented about really evaluating what's most important in life and what our needs are. And food, healthy family, shelter, safety. Someone, I'm trying to remember, maybe it was you, Sophia, who talked about those things, made a number of comments about, it was you, about peace, safety, health, food. And I do think that some of the things we're going to learn from this, and it's even related to what Alex is talking about with the youth movement and the environment, is what is most important. You know, I was thinking about the socialization of you all with your friends and how you live, or many people live on their phones, even when they're with their friends. You're tapping away and we're talking on our phones. And now you realize if that's the only way you can communicate with others, it's really hollow. It's not as connecting as when you're in that space with them. And so I wonder if after this is over, we're going to just return to using phones and texting all the time, or we're going to really make an effort to be with each other in their space and really have that face-to-face engagement that we normally have. And back to food, Sophia, you know, is food going to be more important to people? Is local food and making sure there's a supply of food going to be more important in terms of where people spend their money versus extra things? I don't know. Those are conversations. Hadley says, what about camps? Right now, some summer camps are offering refunds. They, I think, hope to be open, but I don't know that they know if they'll be able to yet. I don't think any of us know that. And especially a lot of camps are also populated with kids not only from Vermont, but from other states. And so with Boston and New York so close, a lot of those kids potentially being closer to, quote, hotspots of risk. How do we balance that safety issue when people can carry this virus and not be showing signs of being sick? And then, you know, if you camp, and if you stay in overnight camps with cabins and people really close together, that's really hard. Your questions are coming faster than I can answer them. Let's see. Timur, I'm so sorry about not being able to pronounce it right.
No problem.
I have a question about possible universal testing. This is a really big issue. I have heard from someone else who just came back from Southeast Asia that when they were flying back at the airport, at every place in town that they went, people's temperatures were being taken. They had methods of checking, they had the backup testing of the actual swabs if they needed them. And our health system and our government and our private health system and our federal situation has really not built us up to be prepared to do that. And so even right now, as the governor is opening up the opportunities for people to be a little more engaged in society, most health experts are saying we don't have the testing and the tracing that we should have. And it's a bit of an embarrassment, frankly, that many other countries that are smaller, that don't have as robust an economy as we do, are ahead of us in terms of the ability to do these tests throughout their communities regularly, to make sure that it isn't spreading as they have more people. The concept is being discussed, but right now, the way many in government are, is they're allowing for it to be a private sector sort of, you can afford it if you can afford it, and if you can't afford it, too bad attitude. For some of us, we feel that a more universal system and a universal approach with all of us in it together is a better approach, but that's not the current national energy that's happening. Connor says, how can we ensure and strive for economic equity with the quarantine when so many people are out of work and different workplaces have different methods of paid and unpaid leave? Excuse me, I need a quick whistle wetter of water. Connor, I couldn't agree more. I think what this pandemic has revealed, along with the broadband inequity, is financial inequity issues. We had half the state living paycheck to paycheck when the economy was good before the pandemic started. And what that means is that as soon as the economy is disrupted, whether it's a natural disaster of the weather, or in this case, a natural disaster of a virus, and sometimes there's unnatural disasters like war or other things, that so many people are living on the edge. Do we really have such a good economy and such a good system if half of our people don't have any savings or don't have a paid family leave insurance program? And these are things that are getting into the political realm of what your legislators, what myself as lieutenant governor, and what the governor are talking about as the different ways that society and government can exist together for our economics, for our regulations, for the protections of our people. And that's one reason to be involved. I'm not going to get into a lot of the politics of who's on what side right now, because I think that's not really what we're talking about right now. But I do think if people care about things like minimum wage or paid family leave or healthcare systems or housing, those are the reasons to engage your parents and to engage your representatives and senators and ask them, now that we're seeing these inequities exposed by the coronavirus, what are we going to do about it going forward? And there's lots of different answers and solutions, but if you don't have the conversation with your legislators, you won't hear what those are, and then you can offer your perspective. I'm trying to be sort of politically balanced because I don't really feel there's a need to be overly partisan in this conversation. Hadley said, what about the colleges? Are people going back for next year? I'm assuming you're talking about the Vermont State colleges and the huge issue of this last 10 days. But I don't know if you're talking about specifically the state colleges or all college and education after high school. Is Hadley on, and can you just clarify for me real quickly?
All colleges.
All colleges. Okay, thank you. At this point, I think that's an unknown. I think a lot of colleges are looking at how to do online coursework, but I think also a lot of folks aren't as interested in online coursework as in person, and the opportunity to do labs and hands-on experiences, and whether it's rivers or whatnot. So I think right now, I honestly just don't know the answer to colleges and whether they're going to open up next year or not. I think that's going to be a college by college situation, as well as state governors and whether or not they allow for group congregations. There's a lot of question about whether or not there's going to be a big rise in illness in the fall when flus typically get stronger again. So I think there's just too many scientific and medical unknowns at the moment to know the answer to that. Casey McCann, Do we know if grade schools are going to be back next year? We don't know yet. The hope would be, the answer would be yes, but I think some of that may depend on how many people have gotten the virus and have immunity, whether there's a vaccine, whether we have learned. I mean, just think about how much has happened in the last 6 weeks and how long away it is until we get to, say, August or late August. There's another, 4 months for that to happen. And so for those of us that are farmers, we can tell you a lot of food can be grown in 4 months. There's a lot of science to be learned in 4 months. And I think we'll know a lot more about school then. Connor, you have a whole bunch of points and questions. If a vaccine is not effective, how can we ensure that we will stay safe without everything falling apart from us being isolated for so long? With everything shut down for so long, what can we do to make systemic change that will be implemented when we get back? And how can we reduce food waste to help people with food insecurity in our communities? Sorry for all the questions. That's it. Laugh out loud. Well, it's good to have questions, Connor. Keep asking them. I also want to say, if any of you have questions that I don't get to because I've either missed them or glossed over them accidentally, please feel free to reach out to my office at the Lieutenant Governor's website and send me a follow-up email, and I'll try to answer that. Or you can send it to Holly, and Holly can send it on to me, or Alyssa, or Sam, or maybe there's one more person in there. And we will try to answer all the questions. It is overwhelming how many questions we're getting right now at the office because people are really struggling with access to unemployment and other things, but I will do my best to get back to you at some point with your questions to be answered. So, Connor, if a vaccine is not effective, what are we going to do without everything falling apart from us being isolated for so long? That is actually a huge question. It's one that I don't think we really know the answer to, but I do know that there's amazing things happening in so many communities with local mutual aid groups where neighbors are helping neighbors. Folks are checking in on their senior neighbors by either phone or even going to their door, but standing 10 feet back so they can check in on them and make sure they have the basic needs that they need, whether it's toilet paper or food. And so we are seeing ways that both the government as well as non-government entities and even just springing up mutual aid groups that didn't exist before are helping each other so that things don't fall apart. But I do think it's important to think about what things you can do, like looking at your own yard. If you have a yard with some sun in it, maybe go out, well, if it's a little wet today, but maybe tomorrow, and dig up some of the grass and think about doing a garden. Talk with your family about growing some food and learning about what you might be able to do to put some food up so that as a whole, we're more resilient. I know that Alex is doing a lot of work around resiliency in the future and the climate crisis. You can think about some of those things and how we can use fewer resources and then use our extra resources to help each other if we're in a position to do that. With respect to systemic change, I think really thinking about things like broadband, thinking about wages, thinking about affordable housing, those are conversations you can have with legislators now, even if they can't quite work on the policy this minute. Legislators are starting to talk about the remaining policy items to address before we adjourn at some point in the summer, once we've gotten through the most critical acute issues from the coronavirus. And for food waste, I think it's an interesting thing. I've been learning and hearing a lot about food waste, particularly in Florida, California, South Carolina, where a lot of harvesting would be happening now, but the workers don't exist to harvest it, or the farmers have stopped harvesting it because the big wholesale outlets they had of sending food to processors that process food for schools and restaurants aren't taking food anymore. And so the farmers aren't even spending the money to harvest it, even though we have so many people hungry going to food shelves and others. This is a role that I think normally decent governors would use the National Guard for, to bring folks in to harvest the food. The National Guard also has the trucks to then deliver that food to those places that need it, like food shelves and others. And again, we could use some of the government programs to pay workers that exist right now so that the farmers would still also not be out the money that they're going to be out if they were to hire people to harvest the food, but not get paid anything for it. So I think there's possibilities there with creative leadership to not waste as much food. Unfortunately, I haven't seen that in some of those states just yet. But I keep passing the idea along, but I don't have all the answers either. And they have lots of other people passing ideas to them. Gwen, where would a child go if their guardian had the coronavirus and had no other place to stay? Whew. Gwen, I appreciate that question, and I'm going to have to look into that. I know that there are other foster parents and guardians who are working to try to take in kids and help. But it would be something, if that happens, please reach out to my office immediately, because I know the Department of Children and Families and some other of the state agencies are overwhelmed with calls, and we are too. But if there is a situation like that, we would move that call right to the top of the list. We would reach out to the leaders of all state agencies and work to get another place for that person to be safe as quickly as possible. I would certainly advise that person to try not to be in the same room as the person who is sick. But I know many houses have one bathroom, and so even going in the same room. So wearing masks are really important. Washing your hands, like is regularly talked about, would be really important. But please, if you know of someone in that situation, please reach my office, 828-2226 or deb.wolf@vermont.gov, and we will make calls the minute we hear from you in that way to try to get a safer situation. But that is a very scary potential reality. Thank you for bringing it up, and I know that's not easy to talk about. Lexia said, will school be open in the fall? I think we don't really know, and I think I've addressed that. We'll know more probably in June or July. The question about youth council, Mackenzie, do you want to ask that question out loud?
Yeah, how Alex is talking, or how she mentioned that, is that like an actual possibility? And if so, how, like, what's the time frame on that?
So I think Alex was talking about a bill, 775, is that right? And I don't currently know, well, I do know that right now, bills that are not related to the coronavirus are not the top of the agenda right now. So in this minute, I would say they're probably not talking about it. With respect to it coming into session this year and coming up to be discussed, Alex might know better if there's been any discussion in the committee about it, but I suspect if it's going to cost money, it's probably less likely, because the state is likely to have literally hundreds of millions of dollars less money to spend next year than we normally would if everything hadn't been shut down. But interestingly too, I know that a lot of folks are organizing, just like the Vermont State College organic movement that just exploded last weekend with 25,000 people getting involved and signing petitions. Nobody had government money to make that happen. And so one possibility would be to develop a youth council and have it of, young leaders from across the state having virtual meetings, which cost almost no money, talking about issues and ideas important to young people, and then sending letters from that council to all of your legislators and elected representatives like myself to have a voice, even without government money. And maybe with Alex, you could talk about the youth lobby and the money that was going to be spent helping get young people to the State House each week. Maybe some of that money could be used to help facilitate an organizer for weekly meetings that could be, 100 or 200 person Zoom meetings with a youth council from every school, and discussing a sort of an agenda or a wish list of things to be addressed, much like the climate action demands. I can't remember what it was called, but it's hanging right outside my office, to talk about many of these youth issues like broadband, hunger, other issues of inequality, whatever is on youth's mind. Brooke, why are daycares open and not school? And when we go to daycare, there are still a lot of kids. So what is the point of daycare when there is school? Well, daycare is actually not open for all kids. Daycare is only open for kids of essential workers so that nurses and doctors and healthcare workers can go to work, and a few other professions that are keeping the wheels turning on safety or basic needs. So daycares, many of them are closed, and those that are open for select kids to make sure their parents can continue to go do the work they need to do to keep people healthy or distribute food and so forth. So not all daycares are open, and they are trying to keep pretty close track. Certainly if anybody were to get sick, that would be an alarming situation, and I'm sure that daycare would be closed and those kids would be isolated along with their families, just like all of us are. Holy moly, I'm not going to get through them all because there's so many more down below. I keep scrolling down and you're writing faster than I can answer. The myth for 10 seconds. So it is, there's no scientific evidence around whether you can hold your breath for 10 seconds or not as whether you have the virus or not. However, a big indicator of whether you're at risk with the virus or have the virus is shortness of breath. And one of the things they're starting to find is that folks who otherwise feel healthy have actually been adjusting their breathing habits, even if they do have some of the virus, where you're breathing a little faster, but you don't realize it, to get more oxygen in and out of your lungs. So be aware about your breathing. It is good to take a deep breath and see how long you can hold it, not while passing out. Just take a breath and count every day, a couple times throughout the day. And if you notice that changing to being a shorter amount of time, then it's worth thinking about a conversation with your medical provider. It doesn't mean you have coronavirus, though. There's lots of things that will create a shortness of breath, but that is something to pay attention to. Obviously, if you're a smoker or you're vaping or doing any of those things, which you shouldn't be doing, by the way, those are also going to affect your lungs and make it harder for you to breathe. So I wouldn't say the 10-second thing is science specifically, no. Sam put my website up. Thank you, Sam. Big question, I think this is one important. Where would a child go if their guardian? Okay, I think we did talk to that one.
Most of them.
Okay, thanks. You got ahead of me. Good, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Jonathan, I'm going to answer that one real quick. I am running for governor still, but much of my time these days is spent serving as lieutenant governor, trying to help people with their basic needs, trying to address unemployment. You know, I think a lot of folks feel like campaigns are too long anyway. And so not really running for governor right now, and more actively serving is my primary job. Campaigning will happen more intensively after we get over this hump of the coronavirus. I wouldn't say till we get back to normal, because normal may well be well after the August primary or the November general. In fact, I'd say beyond likely. I think this is some form of the new normal for quite a long time, until there's a vaccine or we have herd immunity in some way. There's conversations about having all mail-in ballots, which might actually help democracy in terms of how many people participate. But it's also really hard to be out there visiting with people and listening to people as much when summer fairs aren't happening and festivals aren't happening and farmers markets with lots of people aren't happening. But yes, everybody will be running for something, who's running, and you should certainly try to pay attention. I think that's probably good, Holly, unless you have another thought.
That was amazing. And if you do have other questions, Sam put the link up there, or you can email Alyssa. You all have her email and she can pass those on. It is 3:30, so I think we need to wrap up. I want to thank Lieutenant Governor Zuckerman for being here with us and for taking the time to answer all those questions. And I want to thank all of the youth and young people for your brave, bold voices, for sharing your stories, for caring about others, and offering your ideas. And I wish we could do a big group high five, and it's like one of those things again. So hands up, high five to all of you out there. See all those hands. Thank you so much for doing this. And we will look at doing another forum in the future and keep doing the work on the Youth Council bill and moving those things forward. Alyssa, do you want to say one final goodbye before we send everybody off?
Just thank you so much, everyone, for doing this. I enjoyed all of it, from the prep session to some of your testimonies before today and then hearing them today. Please keep in touch. I will talk to anyone who wants to about the Youth Council as that moves forward. And yeah, we'll let you guys know as well if we do another one, because it doesn't matter if you do it more than once.
We can do this again with another group. I also wanted to say quickly, I was lucky enough to learn a little bit of sign language when my daughter was born, because for those of you that don't know, kids can learn sign language faster than they can develop their vocal cords. And so since it's a very visual world with Zoom, I want to offer you all that this means thank you. So if you're ever on mute and you have to say other things, this means thank you. Oh, Eleanor, I don't know all the lettering. Oh, thank you for trying. I just know a few of the signs, but Eleanor, that's awesome that you know sign language too. Big smiles.
My sister Abby on the call. She's partly deaf, so I learned a lot of sign language.
Yeah, thank you, Abby, as well. I thought that might be partly a situation there, but yeah. So thank you, everybody, for being on the call.
Thanks,
Everyone was
everybody.
wonderful. I'm so surprised about everyone's dedication here. It was great.
Thank you.
Agreed. Awesome. Thanks, Timur. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
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 Bye.